for jumping out. Okay, so my name is Jasmine McDonald, and Christelle, could you do me a favor? I don't know exactly when we're coming back in, but could you just let me know when it's 4 o'clock? All right. So once again, welcome everyone. This is What Does the Science Tell Us? Navigating Windows of Susceptibility and Intervention Studies. I really want this to be a conversation. So I'm just going to say I'm Jasmine and kind of give you some overview so that we can have this conversation. But to join this conversation, I thought it would be good to just play the video that was provided when you signed up for this session. So I'm going to share my screen so that I can share this video with you. And I hope we're all seeing Moving Towards Beauty Justice, Conversations for Change. And I'm going to just play the video that accompanied this one. Okay, very brief, but to the point. And really what I want us to gain from this video is that there are chemicals in the products that we use that may be harmful during specific times in our life course. And this could be times where we're highly developing, cells are constantly turning over. In my field of study, that includes in utero, so when a baby is unborn, so in the womb. It also includes puberty, so that's the time period that boys and girls are developing their sexual characteristics. It's also during pregnancy, right after pregnancy, during breastfeeding, and then also when a woman is going through that transition period from having their period to no longer having periods, so going into the postmenopausal period. And so during this time, across our life, we're constantly using different products, everything from hair products to skincare products to makeup. And when we're considering the use of these products during these sensitive windows, it may be a time period where we have more chance of bad things happening. So there's studies that have shown that phthalates, which are a type of endocrine disruptor chemical, and endocrine disruptor chemicals interrupts your endocrine system, which is your hormonal system. And so during pregnancy, they've shown that high levels of phthalate exposure is associated with the child being born early, so a preterm birth. And there are many other things that have been associated, such as neurodevelopment delays, autism, et cetera. And for the woman, there's also the risk of breast cancer has been associated with the use of some of certain hair care products. And so really what we want to do is, and so for example, I love this question by Jason. And I'm actually going to ask Christelle to share our Padlet so that you can see what some participants were thinking about before they joined, and for you to anonymously also post your questions if you're not comfortable posting in the chat. And I'm going to share my screen as well so that everyone can see that as we go. And did you share it in the chat already?
Yes.
Okay, great. So one of the things that we need to note is that when you're thinking about, can this affect us in later life? Like, okay, I'm using this now, but will this affect me in later life when I'm in my older age? The answer is yes. So when we're thinking about certain diseases that are chronic, so for example, I study breast cancer. Cancer has a very long period of time to develop. It's not like something happens and boom, you have cancer. It takes time. And so when we're thinking about these chemicals that we're using, we have to ask ourselves, for one, is how frequently are we using these chemicals? Are we giving ourselves a daily dose of a high amount and that accumulated dose will cause problems? Or for example, when we think about radiation, you can be exposed to radiation at a single time point, and that can have downstream effects. When we're thinking about these products, a lot of these products are the chemicals that we're introduced to in our body are short-lived. I mean, there was an intervention study done with Latinx adolescents, and they were asked to change their beauty products, and they collected their urine at baseline, so before they changed their behaviors. And in the urine, they were going to test for different endocrine disruptor chemicals to see if they changed with behavioral change. So day 0, they gave their urine, they were still using their same products. They exchanged 2 of their products that they use frequently. And then on day 3, they gave another urine sample to determine, is there a lower amount of these endocrine disruptor chemicals with such a brief change in behavior? And they found, yes, just within 3 days, the change of behavior reduced the levels of some of these endocrine disruptor chemicals. So it's important to understand that when we're talking about these chemicals, the reason that they remain in our body so long is mainly because of a consistent use, a daily routine. Like your elbows have a routine, your eyes have a routine, your face has a routine, your skin has a routine. And these routines are pretty much a daily routine. And so it's the accumulation of these products. Whereas the interventions that have been explored are changing to a cleaner product, especially those products that you use on a daily basis. So here we had some other comments. I don't really know anything about makeup or skin products. So I'm hoping that we are going to have a conversation and learn a lot. What are the scientific facts? These ingredients, we call them umbrella term endocrine disruptor chemicals, but they're parabens, they're phthalates, it's formaldehyde, it's BPA, it's a lot of different products. What are the toxic effects of beauty, and to understand how to bring this information to the community? Well, one of the things that's important to know is that there are actionable things that you can do as an individual, but we'll also learn today throughout the sessions that there are things that are actually happening in legislation, like to actually ban these products. Interestingly, in 1938, there was the Cosmetic Product, what was pretty much a safety act that was put in place to make sure that the products that we were being sold were safe. But this was mainly for drugs, not cosmetics. But it's the Cosmetics Act, but it was mainly an infrastructure to make sure that the drugs that we were being provided were not harmful. This 1938 bill has not seen a change, and it is 2021. And so many other countries, like if you look at the European Union, they've banned a number of different chemicals that we still use in our products today. So we have to be cognizant of what we're using and kind of change our behavior to use products with safer ingredients. And so the risks for women, especially pregnant women and women who are breastfeeding, for that comment, as a breast cancer researcher, one of the things that's important is that that's a really vulnerable time for you and your baby. So I'm going to throw it back to you all. What is the risk? What can you imagine would be the risk based off of what I said for women using these products? And what is something that, we could do, we could advocate, we could change to address the use of these products during a vulnerable window? And this kind of goes with, how is it being addressed? Any thoughts? And you can also put your thoughts here on the screen as well. some of you are probably already acting in these behaviors. Some of you, I'm sure, actually making safer choices. So let me pose a more direct question. So the science is telling us all of this. The science is telling us that we're exposed. The science is telling us that this can have harmful effects to ourselves, for chronic disease, to our children. So how do we address this? So what soaps are not wear makeup? Okay.
I think large.
Go ahead, Hannah.
One of the biggest pieces of power we have that I think is underutilized right now, which comes from a lack of education and awareness, is our ability to vote with our dollars. Especially as women of color, like, we have the buying power in this market. And when we know better, we can truly influence, we can influence bigger brands to pay attention to these health disparities that with because of the products and chemicals and ingredients. And two, we can elevate the Black women and Latinx women owned beauty companies already making safer products for us and giving them space in this industry. So it's power of dollars, like our dollars are votes. And I think the more we can share education, the more we can utilize that power.
And so when you say power of the dollar, you mean us as consumers actually
Correct.
choosing to buy from certain brands and not buy from certain brands.
Correct. And at the very least, asking the questions of, you know, as a brand who's marketing to women of color, what are you doing for us now that we have this information that such and such chemical is harmful?
Okay, got it. And so let me ask you, ask the group. So one of the things is to hold the companies accountable and using that dollar and choosing better brands. How do you all choose your brands? At this current moment, like, how do you choose? Word of mouth? Okay. How do you choose the brand? You research ingredients online, okay? Use brands that disclose all of their ingredients. Okay. And so there's also, I don't know if anybody has used apps. Yes, so that's us. Yeah, so there's apps as well.
At the very least, everything has to have a label on it unless you're the
No, it's true. Everything should have a label on it. I agree with that. And sometimes you'll find products that actually don't have an ingredient list, or you'll find products that have in the ingredient list parfum, and you have no idea what parfum or fragrance even stands for. What ingredient is that? So there is some legislation to ask for more disclosure of what does parfum mean, what is in it, like a true disclosure of all ingredients. And there are apps like Think Dirty, EWG. There's one by Silent Spring Institute. All of these, what you can do is actually scan your product that you're using, and it'll give you kind of like a red light, green light to determine if it's good for use. Okay, and so I love this statement by Marie. So as an industry pro, where do you find reliable information? Most educational info is coming from the brands, of course. So there's like a bias there. Are they actually disclosing correct information? And ingredient fear trends like diets and things. So like ingredients do change very often. So one of the things that we find in our studies is that you can do a study where you can ask a woman, okay, what are the products that you use? And they can say, oh, I use Tresemme, blah, 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 blah. And you can look at that, you can actually like get their urine, do some analysis, look at what's in their urine. And then you can say like, oh, you know what? We found all this in Tresemme. So Tresemme is not a good brand. But you can't really do that because brands are constantly changing their formulation. So something that we study 1 year from now may be very different 2 years from now. And so that's like this. And then also there's this trend where people will say, my product is eco-friendly, my product is paraben-free, phthalate-free, my product is natural. These are trends and terms that are being thrown around, and you have to make sure that they're using them appropriately and that everything is labeled clearly. So look for brands that conduct clinical testing. Yes. And I would say, if you don't want to trust the brand, trust a third party. So I see people talking about Think Dirty. I haven't heard of INCI Decoder. That's one I'll look into. EWG, they're third parties. So they have no obligation to these brands. How do people feel about who have used EWG and Think Dirty? Do you feel that that's helped you address the problem of picking cleaner products? Right, so think twice before buying, build up personal awareness. And then the question here, is there somewhere where you can learn what common ingredients are used for and what impact they have? Yes, so for example, you will see a lot of products now saying phthalate free. Well, what's the point of a phthalate even being in a product? If you look at some of the literature, most of it says that phthalates are being put in to make the product smell good. So that's why sometimes you'll see a product that says fragrance. Fragrance is just code for phthalates being added. Parabens. Parabens, if you now see the trend, you know, paraben free. Paraben has been associated with poor outcomes, health outcomes. Why are they even added? Well, they make the hair more malleable. It makes the hair easier to manipulate. And you may see like synthetic estrogen. Like, why is that in a product? Well, that's mainly in a product to help with hair growth. So a lot of these chemicals are being added to the product for the product to be more agreeable to your hair texture or for longer shelf life. So many ingredients, and these are major offenders. So I would say, you know, these are major offenders that have been associated with poor outcomes. And if you look at the breast cancer prevention partners, they kind of have like a long list. It's BCPP. They provide you a list of some of the chemicals that they've been working on getting banned from, like PFAS or forever chemicals. And then also I would say EWG has like a dirty list, like ingredients to avoid. So I would use them. And then also there's formaldehyde in some of these formulas as well. So that's also an ingredient that you need to avoid. Okay, and so let me ask you, it seems like the actions that, you know, some of you are taking are very individual, right? So it's, I'm going to make this individual choice to maybe use Think Dirty, maybe use INCI Decoder, maybe use EWG Verified. These are my personal choices. But how are you impacting your community? What actions have you been taking, or do you think we can take to not just have this individual impact, but a community impact? Involve industry pros. How do we involve industry pros? And Christelle, can you put some of these great comments into our Padlet? So how do we involve industry pros? And who are the industry pros? Like, who are we talking about? And you got to applaud from Jason. Like, who are the industry pros? Who do we need to talk to? Real question. I actually have, like, who do we need to get involved? Okay, CEOs. Okay. And see, those are two different frames of thought, right? We have the CEO of a company, and we have the stylist. To me, I would say they're both industry pros, but they probably take different approaches, right? So let's start with Marie, since you are a stylist. You know, how do you want to be informed? Like, this session is going to include a lot of professionals, a lot of people who are in the community, a lot of people who are doing research, a lot of advocates. How do we inform stylists? Like, how do we get in contact with this particular industry pro, the stylists themselves, to impact this knowledge? And then Jason, for you, for the CEO of the company, what company are we talking about? There's the companies that are like Shea Moisture, which is a company that actually has like phthalate free, paraben free, you know, that their CEO, they're already doing it. But you know, the actual people who create the formulations, that's a different, right? Like, that actually does the chemistry and the science. So do we need to talk to the chemists? Do we need to talk to the scientists that are developing these formulations? What about the stylists who are buying it from a stock, right? So there's like a supplier. Do we need to talk to the suppliers? Do we need to talk to Target? So when we think about, you know, how are we going to impact our communities, we also have to think, like, who are we going to talk to? What industry? And so I throw it back to you all. How do we talk to them? How do we get to the stylists? So Marie, if I wanted to talk to 50 stylists in Northern Manhattan, what would I have to do to get your time in order to convince you on product safety and making changes? Do I talk to you? Do I talk to the salon owner? Who do I talk to?
I think this is a great start. I train with Cut It Kinky, and what I really like with them is they're brand agnostic. So they discuss a lot of products, and they're the one place I've ever received education that it isn't selling me something. So I think more brand agnostic education would be great. And again, letting our educators know what sort of ingredients we're using and what we're putting on. If I'm using this all day, every day, and I'm selling it to my clients and I'm recommending it to my clients, that's a lot of people who I have impact with. And I'm opening a salon right now, and I want to make sure everything that I have on my shelves is safe to use. And I want to make sure whatever I'm selling is ethical and responsible and not going to harm anybody. But I think definitely brand agnostic education.
I love that, brand agnostic education. I haven't heard that before. So is this the people who provide the brand agnostic education, this is at the school that you get your cosmetic license from, or are these like continued education courses?
It's a continued education course. It's like a mentorship program, just working on haircutting and wash and goes for tight girls. It's called Cut It Kinky. So they've given me the most education so far about ingredients and what types of products to use, because again, they're not sponsored by a brand who's saying, okay, go buy our mousse or buy our gel or whatever. They're just saying, hey, these are all the things we've tried. These are where we're getting good results. And they've been the most on top of it I've seen so far. But I still would love to see more.
Okay, I love that. If you, I mean, can you post the Padlet again, Christelle? Because some of this information would be great. I'm a researcher. I'm always looking to provide information in order to impact the community. So never heard of brand agnostic education. And really the stylists are our professionals, right? So we go to our stylists and we assume they know everything and we trust them to use the right products. So I will say that there is a safe product list that Janet Noodleman, who is part of Breast Cancer Prevention Partners, is working towards having a safe product list, and really also pushing towards all the products that stylists and salons purchase have an ingredient list, because sometimes they don't. So I would definitely look I can connect you to her as well. And
Jasmine, it's 4:01.
yeah, so I'm looking at this thing. It says remaining 12 minutes. So I think we're okay. So just shoot me your, can you send Christelle, who's taking notes, your information, Marie, and I can reach out to you directly. Yes, and Janet Noodleman is speaking during session 7. And so Marie, I urge you to go because she has a product list that she's developing so that, stylists know which brands are safe and which ones may not be. And then, okay, so I love this comment by Freedom. Start petitions to send big companies like Amazon, Target. So there is more pressure. And this is something that Mike Shade works on Mind the Store. I don't leave it better section. How do you join the leave it better section? I think if you go down to your groups and you go to breakout rooms, that's where you would find it, Jason. And so when we're speaking of, the idea of Amazon, Target, Walmart, those are big companies. And if you go to a Target now, or even a Walmart, you'll start seeing that they have clean indicators. And that's because these big industries are getting pushback in order to show that they're providing customers with information where they can buy safe easily. And so you'll also, like, if you go to read the list, when you read the ingredient list, it'll also tell you like, this is a clean product. So that's what the big companies are doing. But what about the dollar store? Or what about when you're walking along Harlem and you just jump into a beauty store? Where's the regulation there? So I say that point to say that yes, these big companies like Amazon, Target, there's pressure on them, Freedom, but there's not a lot of pressure when it comes to those mom and pop stores that are very prevalent in Northern Manhattan. How do we target them? Like, any ideas? Like, how do we get them to change? Because those are the stores that we're also highly frequenting, our neighborhood. Any thoughts? Do you think, Freedom, we can start petitions for even those small stores?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Like, why not? Like, if we can band together and let's even talk about holding companies accountable. Why can't we hold our mom and pop stores accountable? We're giving them our dollar. So when we're talking about buying power, maybe that's where our voice and our dollar can also be met with legislation. So there is like local legislation where that's where We Act for Environmental Justice works around. Yes, so Sophia is actually with We Act for Environmental Justice, and she's saying it's tricky because they are smaller businesses. So we need to educate both them, but more importantly, their customers. So, saying that we have a petition that we want this, they also need to understand why we want this. Now, do we have anybody who is a small business owner? And coming from the mindset of a small business owner, how could we talk to a small business owner to make changes? Because small businesses have a host of different concerns than your Target does, right? Than your Amazon does. So are there any small business owners? And I would say starting a salon is definitely being a small business owner. But anybody who, what it's like to really have to balance both the business and also the customer demands. All right, well, let's say I do this. Let's say we are all small business owners in Harlem. Yeah, so Marie, you're right. And sometimes I tell people it is shady, but it's legal. And if you look at if you really want a product that is, okay, so all these will close in about a minute. The EU has more legislation around these products. So if you really want to know like brands that are really safe, the fact is that sometimes they're safe and not as affordable, but the EU will give you that list. So one of the things I also want to say is we need action to make sure that safe products are affordable. And Marie, you're right. What can be done in the US is not always done in the EU. So we have to be mindful of that. Well, thank you so much for joining this session. You're about to be rerouted out. For those who are really interested, I would definitely join Janet where she'll be talking about some of the legislation. Oh, thank you so much.